one.
Hi, I'm Julian McKenzie.
And I'm Tristan.
Welcome to the Scrum podcast. It's been like 5 months. It's been way too long. I've been waiting for this day for a very long time. But the Scrum podcast is finally back. The only thing is, Tristan and I, for the very first time, recording any podcast, are not in the same room. In fact,
we're not seeing each other.
Yes, in fact, everyone involved in this episode, so myself, Tristan, and our producer, Kevin Laramie. Oh, yeah, right. We have a new producer. We'll get to all that in a second. We are all in our respected abodes, in quarantine and no chill, as I like to call it, as of course we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a great time to restart or start for some of our listeners a podcast.
Yeah, we're definitely going to go and kind of explain the whole process of why we stopped or why we went onto a hiatus, why it ended up being so long. I think you have a bit of an idea as to why it took so long, but and also how we're doing. And I'm just going to take that bit of time to say that if you are affected in any way or another by the pandemic, that you are not forgotten, especially if you work in the health department and the health sector. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And we're going to get through this.
Yeah, Tristan, I'm very glad you mentioned those healthcare workers, because those people have been, I don't want to say in the line of fire, but that's what it kind of feels like over these last few weeks with the rising amount of cases and deaths from this terrible pandemic just rising in Quebec, where we're at, in other parts of Canada and parts of North America and around the world. So we definitely have those healthcare workers, those frontline workers in our thoughts, especially during this podcast and at other different points throughout our days. All we're really supposed to do is just, stay inside and keep our distance from people. The frontline workers, wherever they are around the world, those are the real heroes, just trying to care to people who are battling this COVID-19 pandemic. And it's not a sporty start to our podcast, but it's very important that we mention them.
We're used to getting outside of the margin of traditional sports, and we're going to take a bit of time explaining because we're not transitioning. It's not a full-on transition that we're doing, but we're changing the MO a little bit. I think you might have noticed that Julian McKenzie did not say at the top of the show that this is a podcast that analyzes the sports media landscape in Canada. That we're going to go through a little bit of those changes, but I think everybody here is glad to be back, and I feel like it's a great little moment to kind of throw it to Kevin and to let Kevin talk a little bit and explain the reasoning to the folks here listening as to why we're now at the Sports Podcasting Network.
Well, I knew two journalists that needed a place to talk, and nothing better to have both of you a part of the Sports Podcasting Network with this show that not only covers a niche. Of course, you mentioned that things might be a bit different down the road, but I think the idea of looking at sports media, not necessarily analyzing it or just sports in Canada, which is often represented by sports media in Canada. We have a unique media landscape in Canada that sports itself is a huge margin of it, with not a lot of the profit, a lot of the expenses. It's a fascinating topic, and listen to your show over the years, and had the honor of twice going on the show before. It was really a pleasure to listen to it, and of course, both of you personally, we've been knowing each other for multiple years, and I know your dedication to your crafts and the networks of contacts both of you have, and also doing something for the right reason, I think is important, and it's something that you both do. And I wanted to make sure, and I want to let a helping hand if it was needed. Turns out we're here today, and that was my goal, is to make sure both of you keep talking, because that's the beauty of this thing.
Yeah, basically we were in a position where after December, I don't want to say we were at a crossroads with our old network, with Tom Zalat and I, but we were in a situation where we left. We decided to change and find a new place to do our show, and we ended up meeting with Kevin Laramie, who has been on our show before, and we decided to join a network that's more sports focused and has a bunch of great programming. Kevin's been able to just kind of lead all that on his own pretty much, but with Dwayne Rollins as well. There's been a lot of great content he's been able to drum up these past few months and years through the Sports Spot Network, and we're pretty excited that we're able to join them. But there's no beef with Tom. There's no beef with everyone at the Upford Network. It was a great time with them. We did 80 episodes with the network. We wish them nothing but the best. They've wished us nothing but the best. So I'd like to think that it's an amicable end to that chapter of the Scrum podcast, but there's a new chapter to be written with the Scrum podcast now, and it's in the midst of a pandemic, sure, but it's still a new one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's season 3, so of course we're gonna have a little bit of surprises, a little bit of tricks up our sleeves. But yeah, I think it's a right little place to kind of start discussing where this show is going to go, and yeah, I mean, you did a tremendous job saying why we've been gone. I'll add just this one little tidbit, which was kind of interesting to me, and it really made me grin. I don't know if you guys have listened to this little thing that Julian and I and the rest of the group chat that we the formerly Pressbox Hat-Trick crew, we started this little show called Let's Not Talk About Coronavirus, and in the first episode we kind of explained, we kind of went through why it took so long to come back. And the funny thing is, we had planned to do, I mean, this is a warm-up show, and we had planned to do this very same warm-up show the week before this whole lockdown situation started happening. And
Yeah.
And we were supposed to go to Kevin's studio on I believe it was a Thursday, the Thursday where everything started collapsing. And I know Julian and I were writing profusely about whatever was getting shut down. Kevin, I'm sure you were doing something very because of you being the president of the Soccer Reporters Association, or union, I should probably say. So everybody was super busy, and then this whole lockdown happened, and then everything kind of just flowed, and here we are now. But I think all in all, we are very happy to be starting this, even though it's not technically, the best situation to talk about sports, but we're going to try and be as creative as we can. And I guess here's the segue to talk about what we are going to talk about for the at least the third season on. So when we ended our relationship with the Upford Network, Julian and I met up, and at first we were wondering about if we wanted to do the show, and that discussion took about 4 seconds that we wanted to continue doing the show. However, I think we came to a conclusion that limiting ourselves, and not necessarily in a bad way, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because I think we did tremendous shows, and I truly mean that, focusing on the Canadian media landscape, or the Canadian sports media landscape. But we did want to venture outside of those not limitations, but I guess that little mission statement that we had set ourselves for. And that got us really excited, and from the get-go, we had ideas for guests for for you guys to listen in for, and different segment ideas, and we really started being even more excited about the show when we decided to make it a little more general than it was. And that led us to talking to Kevin, and here we are now. So is there anything I'm forgetting, J-Mac? Because I don't know. I'm not seeing you, which is very weird to me. Because usually we bounce off each other, and it's kind of
there's like visual cues. There's a whole there's a whole process to doing a show with someone in studio, and I've experienced it through podcasts with you, Tristan, through doing radio at TSN 690 and all that. Like it's very different doing a show where, especially the way that we do it normally, where we're normally vibing off of each other. Like the way we're doing it now works if one of us is asking a question, the other one is responding, because there's the call and respond kind of deal. For a show like this, you're basically where we're supposed to just be kind of vibing off each other. When you can't see each other, there is some difficulty there. But I mean, I thought at least for the first how many minutes we've been recording so far, I don't think it's been so bad, but definitely like it's definitely an adjustment that I'm now going to be thinking about. But basically with the MO for the show here, we're still going to talk about stories, but we're not going to necessarily limit ourselves to stories that are only big in Canada. If it's something that's really huge all over, whether North America or just all over the world, we're going to find a way to talk about it. And having this now is going to allow us to discuss a wider range of topics. We're still not going to be like every other sports show where they'll talk about the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, they can't really do that right now, but
Absolutely. I definitely, you caught me off guard there. I'm really sorry. This is a preseason game.
How many shows? How many shows do you know have an award? Anyway, we'll get to that in a second.
Ooh, oh, please. God, that you're going to explain how we're a GIF now?
Yes, we're also going to explain how we're a GIF. Yes, there's a lot. This is the preseason show. There's a lot to get to in the restart of the Scrum podcast, episode 81, between us both. The first one in our time with the Sports Pod Network. Yeah, wow. I got so crazy about saying that last thing. I'm just like, oh man, like I just lost my train of thought. Wow. Jeez,
no, but here's the deal. And you were talking about how a lot of podcasts are very much question answer, and I think to very much, and you were saying, oh, there's other shows that are very much how people are vibing with each other, and I think that's one of the good things that we kind of had is that some shows were just literally an interview, which is cool. Like I really enjoy that, and then some of them were just very much us vibing with each other and just the connection that we have, and I think that is really cool. We have that variety. And we're definitely going to bring that back. We're definitely going to bring that to season 3. Do not worry about that. It's just going to be it's going to be a lot of it's going to be a little different, but good different.
A very good different. That being said, I know for the next few weeks, as long as we're still kind of forced to quarantine away from each other, and as long as there's no sports going on, I'm sure in some ways we have to be creative. But Tristan and I earlier this week have already discussed the potential topic for future episodes. I don't know if we want to mention it now or if we want to just keep it for next time we record, when we record our, not the pregame show, but like, the first real big show, episode 82, I guess we'll call that one. I don't know if you want to go into what we want to talk about these next few weeks.
Oh man. I don't know. I don't want to give too much away.
I guess the only thing we can say is there's a very good chance you're watching whatever's been going on that we're likely going to be talking about over the next few weeks. Maybe I've said too much already.
Dude,
but,
there's like 4 shows right now.
I mean, by the time this comes out, it's very likely there might be 6 by then, but there's still quite a bit of content to be churned out from this. But yeah, there's going to be there's going to be that. I'm sure we're going to just, I mean, already in this episode, we're talking about the pandemic. There's going to be other stories to talk about in the pandemic, I'm sure. This is the first episode we've done since the Kobe Bryant death, and not to kind of put us on a downer for a second, but that was a whole, I thought up until the pandemic, that was going to end up being the sports story of the year that was going to just dominate headlines throughout the entirety of 2020, and then everything got shut down. But yeah, that's definitely something that happened, and it was really interesting those days following the death of Kobe in the terrible helicopter crash, seeing the people mourn him, seeing the people bring up the sexual assault case from the mid 2000s, and seeing those two worlds just headbutt a lot. We didn't even get to do any episodes on that because we were in a hiatus. And I think even if it was, I mean, yeah, it definitely, I think still would have fit in our mandate anyway, but that would have been a whole episode in itself. But we don't have that. But that obviously has been, I don't want to say completely washed away, but that has now playing second fiddle to what has transpired over the last month and a bit. If you guys don't mind, I know where I was. I know what the last sporting event I was at before everything shut down. What was the last sporting event, Tristan, you were at? And Kevin, you can chime in on this as well.
Kevin and I were at the same sporting event.
Yep.
It was the first leg of the CONCACAF Champions League quarterfinals between Club Deportivo Olimpia and the Montreal Impact. It was around the time the pandemic. Well, it wasn't a pandemic yet. It was
Tuesday, March 11th was the exact date at the Olympic Stadium. Yes, City Olympia versus the Montreal Impact.
Yeah.
What was the score? I can't even remember the score.
That's God! It was the Impact lost. It was definitely. Yeah. I think it was 2-1 to the Impact, and it was one of those games. And I remember they were playing in Frisco. They were playing FC Dallas in Frisco the Saturday before.
The Saturday before. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Yeah, Ruti scored twice.
Yeah, they were playing on the Saturday, and Thierry Henry, that's a whole other thing. We didn't really talk about that on the Scrum, but so we got almost a team if it wasn't for the sudden injury of Boyan in Frisco. I was very I questioned that lineup very much because of the fact that they were playing in Montreal on the Tuesday. And then we went to the game on Tuesday, and the only player that wasn't in Frisco was Victor Wanyama because he technically wasn't I guess they hadn't sent him there yet. He played his debut, and then you could see that the team was kind of not 100% there physically because they had played on Saturday, and they got upset by Olympia, which were a pretty good team. Let's face it, they weren't a bad squad, and plastered everywhere were those PSAs by MLS of you should watch. It was basically for the players, so it was like wash your hands, don't high five fans, fist bump them instead, which is ridiculous now. Why would you fist bump someone over a high five? You're still touching the person. And then I remember the journalists were kind of making fun of that, and I feel like I kind of was that a little bit too, because everybody was going freaking crazy about this, and a lot of us were like, oh man, like should we elbow five? Like what's going on? And I remember shaking like a few people's hands that day. Thankfully I didn't get COVID-19. I did get a cold after that, which made me quarantine myself much earlier than the lockdown, and made me miss a bunch of press conferences, which was I still pinch myself to this day. I'm like, I missed like almost a full week of of live stuff, of pressers and media availabilities, because I had a cold and I didn't want to be the guy with a cold, which is basically the equivalent of like hiding a bite in a zombie apocalypse. It really felt
That's
like
it.
that.
'Cause doesn't matter if it's a mosquito bite or what. You are hiding it from all the zombies and everyone who is rolling with you while running away from those zombies. At least one of those guys with you are going to suspect if you are a zombie. Let's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
hope that with the way this year has been going, we do not get to that point. What I was going to say is it's funny to think, like, I think that week we were supposed to record, you also had that cold, and I mean, I didn't think it was going to end up being COVID, but like I definitely understood.
Thank God.
Thank God. I definitely understood the precaution. The one thing I'll say with that week was I remember being at a Habs game earlier that week, and I think at that point there were two NHL teams who were considering having their games happen behind closed doors, and we thought there was just going to be a lot more of those arenas closing up shop and closing off to fans. That's what I thought was going to happen. I remember earlier in the week, both the Canadians and the Laval Rocket implemented measures to keep reporters away from players. You had a post game where a couple players showed up at a podium and they sat, actually not even a podium, just a table. They all sat down and people just ran up putting their microphones in front of the players. Nobody pulled a Rudy Gobert and touched the microphones. Thank God. But yeah, that happened. The Laval Rocket practice that week that I was at, they had us in a hallway outside of the regular room in their locker room, two places where we would normally do interviews with players. I guess the reason that was explained was because the room that we would have done the interviews in was being taken up actually by some personnel who were setting up a concert in the venue for later that night. And as a precaution, they just didn't want us in their locker room. You don't know. And then later that week, they had the Rocket at a game. I was at the rink about 2-3 hours before the game. Mark Dumont of The Athletic was there, and we were, just talking the whole time. And then the game was going on. We were still there. Mike Cohen, who writes for the Suburban, and maybe you've seen him in the news as for his role with the English Montreal School Board. We were all sitting together watching this Laval Rocket game and following what was going on in the Utah Jazz Oklahoma City game, where it looked as if they were going to play, then nobody ended up playing. And it was hard to focus on watching hockey that night because at that point it seemed like, okay, this is the first sporting event that we've seen pretty much get perturbed by the coronavirus. And then all of a sudden the NBA is saying, okay, we're shutting everything down indefinitely. And Mark is just saying like, okay, you know what? This is probably the last time we're going to be here for a while. And I thought, what, is this going to be a couple days? Is this going to be a couple weeks? And that was in the middle of March. We are recording this on the first day of May now, and nothing has been the same since.
It hasn't. It hasn't, and it like that event ties so many things together. You were talking about Kobe's passing earlier, and you felt like there was going to be some sort of culmination in the NBA season with the run of the LA Lakers, and it felt like there was like that Kobe was kind of like there with the Lakers, and then LeBron winning, and everything with LeBron and that was supposed to happen with the summer with Space Jam and everything. Like there was some sort of a culmination that just never happened because of the pandemic, and we're going to be able to talk about that, but yeah, there's like everything is kind of at a halt for better or for worse. I mean, it is I think everybody understands that this is for the greater good, but I think that brings me to a question I had while you were kind of giving your little anecdote there, J-Mac. We're all three of us are journalists. All three of us report and work as media members in the sports world. What would you think would be the best scenario? And it feels like right now the best scenario when everything comes back is games. I guess, for a lack of a better term, behind closed doors or without any fans. And I'm wondering, and I've been wondering that for a little while actually, what the media implications in closed door games will be like. How many media at the end of the day will be allowed to be at the games? How many of them will be allowed to participate in the regular flow, as we know, of the I guess the sporting event? How much of us as media members are going to be in it, and how many of us aren't going to be in it?
Man, I've thought about that, and there's one part of me that wonders how much of those regulations with regards to media being present at games, how much of that is going to come from the league that oversees everything? How much of that is it going to be a league? It may very likely be just like a league mandated media policy, whatever they decide to do. I'm sure with TV being the king that it is, you'll have everything be normal to a certain extent. Cameras, your TV personalities that are there. I'm willing to believe everything will be as normal as it could be, considering the television contracts applied to teams and how they relate to the league and so forth. What I'm wondering more, I guess, are the scribes, the people who are going to be sitting up in the press box of writing on the game and trying to see what's going to happen. For me, I think I could see either the league or the publications themselves just limit the amount of people who are there. There's no way we're going to be seeing the jam-packed amount of media, crowd up in a locker room, squeezing up on each other, trying to get in to a locker room. And we're not probably going to be able to get locker room access at this point, I would think. I think the access will continue to be restricted. And I think the media personnel that we're going to be seeing for different publications will drop. I think if you're going to see publications who normally bring out you could have 2 or 3 guys at a game, I can see teams. I can see the league being like, no, just keep it to 1 if you can per entity. Like if you have a TV person and you have a web person, you just have 1 of each, 1 per platform. I can see that happening. I could totally be wrong, but I think if you want to be in a position where you do not have the disease kind of spread to you, I think the less is more here. I don't know if it could get to a point where you have absolutely no media there, but I think there has to be less.
So let me follow up.
Yeah, I think there has to be less. Let me follow
up on what you're saying. I feel like every single sports, or at least in the major sports, have that. Will it be, or do you think that media partners, so people that pay for broadcast rights or pay for, I guess, some sort of access to be the official blank of, let's say, the New York Mets or the Montreal Canadiens or the Toronto Maple Leafs. Given what you're saying, do you think that we could end up in a world where only the official broadcasters get to go in a locker room or do those specific types of things that now that we're post-pandemic, or not now, obviously, but that eventually when we end up being in a post-pandemic world, only the official broadcasters or the official radio or whatnot get that access?
That's a good question. I'd like to think that for sure, if you're an official radio broadcaster or definitely a TV broadcaster, you're definitely going to be in the room. I think you're going to be able to, or maybe not the room, you are definitely getting some sort of media access. I'm not sure how it'll play out for other outlets who choose to cover. That's pretty tough to say. I would think. I feel very confident in saying that for a lot of outlets, broadcasts, a lot of broadcast outlets, a lot of those who are official broadcasters for specific teams, I think not only is it just going to be like, because they've paid the money and all, well, yeah, because they've paid the money, they're going to essentially be there. There's also something you got to think about as well. For a lot of these teams in these different leagues, if these deals don't get carried out, it could end up being pretty bad for, the team in one aspect, for the broadcaster in another aspect. I don't know if you've seen this set of tweets from Matthew Sakaris earlier today. He is a radio host for TSN out in Vancouver, and he put up a really interesting thread on why a lot of the NHL teams are pretty much fighting for the season to resume. And that's because a couple teams, 12, according to him, are saying that they have these regional TV deals with Fox. And they basically say that if the regular season games don't play out as agreed to in their contracts, there's going to be a severe financial penalty. And while the network themselves, they're just chilling, they're fine, the teams would end up losing out in the end. So I think when you consider that teams could be losing out on money and that could effectively affect the league as a whole, I think anything they have that's official, a radio broadcaster or a TV broadcaster, I think they're not going to be getting the short end of the stick. They will definitely have to deal with some restrictions with media, but I don't see them being left out in the cold. I think if you're not necessarily an official broadcaster, that might be a different story. But even then, you can't be in a position where you're censoring media or you're looking as if you're not doing anything to, or maybe, the teams can do whatever they want per se, I guess. But I think with different media outlets, you just have to be careful. I think if you're an official broadcaster, though, teams have a vested interest in ensuring that relationship still remains good,
well, exactly.
So to speak.
I think that one of the words that is very important there that you just said is censoring. And I think that, yes, I do agree with that fact that you're saying that, yes, the official broadcasters are paying for something, but at the end of the day, teams can't necessarily do everything that they want because there are league policies. Mm-hmm. And we are fortunate that do you want me to call you producer Kevin? Kev, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so we're lucky that producer Kevin is also the president of the of the Soccer Reporters. And he could talk at length about how specifically MLS have media policies, and that there are certain things that teams need to do because of MLS regulations, MLS policies. Obviously that doesn't say that they can't, do things that aren't in those policies. Obviously, everybody kind of tries to go a little bit beyond what they probably should do, and then that's just how it goes. But to say that every team can do a little that every media member despite them paying to be official broadcasters, it doesn't necessarily mean that other broadcasters or other media members, can't get access that allows them to do their jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm being too far-fetched here, but
No, but I think that's it. I don't know. I definitely think I could definitely see a situation where the outlets who are already accredited to be at games, I don't see them losing their place. What I do think is going to happen, or what I wouldn't be surprised to see, is if those places sent multiple people there, I could see a situation where either the publication or more than likely the league will say, hey, maybe you shouldn't have this many people here, just so we could do our part, or maybe not do our part. Maybe that's not the best thing to say, but at least have some kind of social distancing amongst reporters. But that is something that this is a topic that I don't think has been discussed nearly as much. And I mean, I don't necessarily think it necessarily needs to be at the forefront of conversation, because there are so many other things that need to be discussed right now. Sports is pretty much at the back burner for life right now. But I definitely think it's something that will have to be discussed at some point. And honestly, I'm not really sure what could happen.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point that you bring up. And I think that we can, at least on the media side of things, or the sports media side of things, see, guys, we're still talking about sports media. Like, we're still going to talk about it. But I think that we have a lot to learn from the political reporters, and how the setup is in place with reporters at the White House, and how there is social distancing between reporters sitting. There's like one or two seats between reporters, and obviously that makes for there being less reporters in the press brief room. But at the end of the day, again, I'm going to go back to, it is kind of for the greater good. However, yes, I think it's definitely an important thing to talk about. And I forgot what I was going to say. Damn it. It is preseason. God damn. Yeah. However, let's end it. Let's not end it, but let's bring it. Unless you have other stuff to bring from the pandemic.
I think there's going to be a lot we're going to end up discussing about the pandemic throughout these next few weeks. I don't think we necessarily need to dump it all. I don't feel to necessarily dump it all off now. There will be other stuff coming, because this is an ever-changing situation, I think.
I did get what I wanted to say. I did bring it back. I should probably, and that makes me think, preseason, that I should probably have a notepad along with me, because I always have a notepad with me. Okay, so I'll do that for the next one. However, so the point I wanted to make is along with the very pandemic conscious discussion that we just had, is also the fact, and as you said, J-Mac, the fact that sports is at the back burner of things, and which is fine in a time that is very much health forward, and very much trying to get the to be as ready as we can for that hell of a challenge that we're into right now. But that also means that a lot of people that are in the sports world, and it includes sports media, but I'll add a bunch of people like the people at the XFL that got their jobs. Either they were furloughed, either they were just completely laid off, or laid off temporarily. I did want to kind of give a shout out to the people, myself included. I was also in that wave of temporary layoffs that just do not have a job anymore, and are very much worried financially, despite there are a lot of protests happening, which is definitely not the way to go, if you ask me. However, you're still your worriness is still valid, you're still very much allowed to be worried about what is going to happen in the next few weeks, months, hopefully not years. But with how everything is going on, I hope that every one of you that are listening are fine with that. Hopefully, if you're allowed to get some sort of money from the government, that you have. And hopefully we can get back to a world where we all get our jobs back, or we can all go back to what we were doing. If what we were doing is good. If it's not good, then I wish you all the best. However, we're definitely going to talk more about that. I'm assuming about a lot of layoffs going on, and we're not. We definitely know about layoffs in the media world. Like, people get laid off all the time. However, there were a lot in the last few months. I did want to acknowledge it. That is what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and it's very good. Not just layoffs as well, but just freelancers who maybe not necessarily that they get laid off, but because of sports stopping, their opportunities that they were doing, those have just been stopped indefinitely, or freelance budgets have frozen as well. Those people, I think, should also we also need to shout out those people as well. And I'll say this, I really hope as much as possible we can return to some sense of normalcy, what we were seeing about a couple months ago. But I've also accepted the fact that unfortunately we are not going to return to what we thought was normal up until mid-March. And what we are going to be experiencing over the next about 12 to 18 months is going to be unlike anything we've ever experienced. And even beyond that, the changes from this pandemic are going to last for the rest of our lives, essentially, and potentially beyond. But I am hopeful that we are going to make the most out of everything that has happened over the last few weeks. And it's important for everyone to just kind of check in on each other and just make sure everyone's okay. Whether it's a journalist, whether it's just a friend, a frontline worker, anybody, and just be kind to one another. I think it's also very easy to be agitated and frustrated and upset about different events that have been transpiring with the pandemic. We didn't even mention the unfortunate shooting that took place in Nova Scotia a couple days ago, which has left an insane amount of people dead, unfortunately, and that has dampened a lot of our spirits. But I just hope from out of all of this, we are able to advance to the light and see some happier days, see some more positive days. And if you listening at home consider the Scrum podcast to be a small part of your happiness towards that point, towards gaining mental sanity, if that is what you desire, well, we are happy to provide that as best as we can.
J-Mac, talking about better days and lighter times, I feel like it's the time to pull out the winning anecdote. I'll just before you go to it, I'll kind of put a little intro to that anecdote. So I don't know if you remembered that. If you're a longtime listener, maybe you do remember that. But we were nominated for an award a year to the day, or almost a year to the day, of us actually winning an award. But we were nominated for the Canadian Podcasting Award for in the sports category. And we went to Toronto, and then we didn't win. I don't remember who won, but congrats to them for winning. But we were a little bummed out. I used to be an athlete. J-Mac was also an athlete in this day. We were a little competitive. We wanted to win, and we didn't. But we also completely understand. That's just how it goes. Sometimes you don't win. However, that specific award, and then the fact that we I feel like we checked it, and it was almost a year to the day, was a very it was a very fun little thing, and it was a hell of a moment. So, J-Mac, can you please make us go back to that moment?
So, with regards to the Canadian Podcast Awards, it played out as it did, and then almost a year later, the show was nominated for a Gala Dynasty Award. It's an award show that takes place every year here in Quebec, where they nominate the best in Black entertainers, TV personalities, radio personalities, radio writers, podcasters, anything to do with Black culture. And the show was nominated for Best Podcast. And during the pre-gala, because they have a main gala and then they have a pre-gala a couple days earlier, the show won the award for Best Podcast. And it's the first time the show has won an award. And it was great to accept the honor. It was great to have Tristan there. My girlfriend, Lindsay Richardson, was also there. Safia Ahmad, who has been on a few episodes of this show. She works with the Laval Rocket now. She was also on hand with us as well, and she was able to celebrate with us. And it was a great night. It was really exciting to be able to celebrate this victory with everybody. I mean, at any time you're able to win an award for anything, it's great. But to have our show be as successful as it has been and to get an award for our efforts is very special to us, and it really means a lot. And what I was hoping for when we eventually came back from hiatus was to show up to the studio and have the award there, let Kevin see it, and just have it in the studio for as a good omen. But unfortunately, we'll have to wait a couple more weeks for that. But in the meantime, getting to talk about it on a podcast. I will say I felt when I did say hey, we're not like other shows, we have an award. I shouldn't have said it like that. I think it's a little cocky to kind of say it like that, and I'm sorry for that. But I will say that it's something that we're extremely proud of, and us two being very competitive people, we'd love to do more. We'd love to get more. We're not in this to get awards, so to speak. But I mean, if you're going to put us up for them, I mean, yeah, we're going to want them. But hopefully this is the beginning of many more awards for the show, for us individually, even for Kevin as well. I like the idea of being commended by your peers. So the Gala Dynasty Award for Best Podcast means a lot for both of us.
It was a tremendous little moment. Definitely. It was well. First off, I really appreciated how you J-Mac were very much into having me a part of this as well, which I very much appreciated. I think it's really cool that the first award that we win as the podcast wins is an award for Black excellence. I think that it is really cool that we shine, and then you shine as well, to the eyes of your community, which I think is really, really, really cool. And the fact that you had me on for pretty much all of the process. I mean, I was up there on the stage with you. So when the show won, you were like, oh, we stood up and we were like, oh, you. And then we kind of had this high five, hug moment, and it ended up being on a video, which ended up being a GIF, which I was quite excited about. I
think the fact that we're a GIF now is almost as cool as getting an award, almost.
And we both looked really good that day, which is also good. It's kind of like the little cherry on top. I think our suit games were pretty strong that day.
Ooh, I wore a turtleneck for the first time pretty much since I was a kid that day, and I got that turtleneck in the mail that day, and I wore it out the packaging that day, and damn, that was. I'm really happy that choice worked out. I wasn't sure how it was going to work out, but I was very happy about the outfit.
It was good. I think my only regret was the shoe game, because I had to wear my ugly boots because there was a snowstorm on that day. I wish I could have color coordinated. However, I mean, that's just. I mean, at this point, that's just that's just talking for the sake of talking. But
Also,
however, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the fact that it was winter. I mean, I know I wasn't wearing the best boots either. I don't know if they'll ever move I'm pretty sure they won't ever move the ceremony to a warmer month because Black History Month being in February, those are the cards, unfortunately, we as Black people have been dealt with. But that's not for this podcast. Anyway, that was my thought.
Yeah. It could have been a better day in February, but we're grateful for we were grateful for that, and we really wanted to share that little moment with you guys, but unfortunately we were on hiatus for that. But we're in May and we're talking about it, so it's good. It's all good. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I feel like it's a pretty complete show, to be fair.
At least a pretty good
warm-up show.
I think so, man. I think we covered a lot of things that happened in the last few months, and now we're at a point where I'm just happy the show is back, to be honest with you, man. I'm happy that we're going to be in a position where we can create content together. I mean, doing Let's Not Talk About Coronavirus was one thing, but the Scrum podcast is where that's where we really get at our best, I find. So what I will say though is big shout out to everyone who's listened to every episode that we've put out so far. We don't get the award that we got from the Gala Dynasty without your help and your support and your listenership. So thank you very much for that. That's something else I very much wanted to mention.
I could not say it better, honestly. Shout out to you guys, definitely. One thing, Kevin, I don't know if you're able to talk. I definitely wanted to thank you for letting us join letting us join SPN. And you have some final words before we end this?
Well, I just hope that we're at the moment of the recording, the old episodes haven't been imported yet. Hopefully, technically speaking, there's no problem. For sure, there won't be any problem for this episode as soon as it is uploaded to the network. It is a pleasure to have both of you on the network for sure. Sports Podcast Network, a few different shows where we're growing and things are evolving, and we have a few journalists that are very high quality journalists in the world of sports. Of course, Tristan and Julian, and I'm thinking about David Foote, who's a hockey journalist in Belleville. I'm talking about...
Shout out David Foote.
Pat Williams, NHL.com writer about the AHL, and more great personalities, of course, Dwayne and I, on the network. We're, of course, working for more in the future. We have a couple of different projects that are coming up, but the Scrum is a big part of what we want to do in the network, too, because it's not just about, every sport and sports... Like, a soccer show, and then we get a hockey show, and we get a cricket show, and we get... It's also about sports as a lifestyle, I think. And that's kind of like something that was missing. And to have done by both of you, I couldn't be happier.
That means a lot. Especially coming from you, Kevin. You've been a great friend to the show for as long as it's been up and running. You've been a great friend to us for a number of years. If it wasn't for you, we probably don't do any bit of podcasting together. So it really means a lot coming from you. And now just thinking about all the stuff we talked about on the show and all the stuff we're going to talk about in the coming weeks. I mean, we mentioned some of the bigger sports that are not going to be happening because of the coronavirus. We didn't even talk about the fact the Olympics got moved to all of next year. There are so many things that are going to be discussed on the Scrum podcast as we keep pumping out episodes. We're going to tackle it as best as we can.
J-Mac, that makes me think one of my favorite parts of the show. We're going to have to rethink how we do the outros.
Oh, man. I'll tell you this. We did not. This is also the first episode we've done where we don't have any notes. And that's a whole other aspect to this too, right? I mean, we normally come into a show saying, okay, we're going to talk about this topic. We have these questions for this interview that's going to happen. We came into this just saying, okay, we just want to just record a show. So we don't have any notes at the end. We don't have any like credits to read at the end. Like we don't have a Patreon to plug or a GoFundMe or an Indiegogo to plug or apparel to push. The music, I will say, I know I submitted a song that could be used as our intro. My boy Cooper Richardson hooked us up with an instrumental. If we end up using it, that's big shout out to him. Shout out to him. If we end up using something else, I'm sure we will thank the royalty free music we're using. We'll figure that out in the outros to come. But yeah, we're gonna make sure our outros, even if they're going to be very different from what they were with the Upfront Network, they're still going to be the outros you know and love and listen to. Surely you do.
That's it. That's what I wanted to hear. But for this warm-up show, we'll keep it brief. And although we've been talking about outros for the past 5 minutes, however, yeah, I think this is what, at least from my perspective, kind of makes us a little bit different. I think the way that we made little tweaks every week, I thought was it made our show a little, like it made it pop a little bit. And hopefully we can bring that again. However, I'm definitely going to advocate for the next show to be a video chat as opposed to an audio chat, because I feel like not seeing you, Julian, is a bit of a. I feel like I'm walking with crutches a little bit.
Like even Jesus and Mary are able to do. Even Jesus and Mary are able to do shows from home when they're able to see each other. There's no reason why the Scrum podcast can't.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about.
Then again, also Jesus and Mary are on Showtime. They have Showtime money. Anyway.
Well, I mean, maybe someday maybe Showtime definitely has. They don't have sports anymore, do they?
Yeah, they do. Don't they?
They have boxing.
They have
boxing.
like the Greg Gumbel show. It's not called the Greg Gumbel show, but they have they don't have sports.
I mean, they used to have boxing because Showtime, of course. But yeah,
they have like Inside the NFL, 60 Minutes. I'm sure it talks about sports every now and then. They don't. I know boxing isn't going to be. They have All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson.
There you go.
They have sports.
So maybe one day we'll make our way to Showtime. But in the meantime, we are very, very excited to be where we are and to be able to broadcast this to you guys. And we'll be back sooner rather than later. We won't take another 5 months, which is a great, great, great bit of news.
I promise.
For Julian McKenzie and Kevin Laramie, my name is Tristan D'Amour, and we'll hear you on next time.